Hey, John.
What up, fellas?
Hey, so we're
Hello.
8 games through the season. They're 3-5, not completely unexpected, but they did start off 2-0. But the thing I wanted to get your opinion on was the defense. So last year, believe in yardage, they finished top 5. In points per game, they finished top 10. I checked. They're 29th and 31st, respectively.
Yeah.
What do you think has been the biggest issue with the defense? Because at times they'll make plays, flashes, but obviously over the course of 8 games, they just have been terrible.
They have been. I mean, obviously the big plays allowed, right? And then it's like, why are they giving up these big plays? And the coverage just hasn't been as good. And, there are times where coverage not as good, and you say, well, you have these 4 guys rushing, all first-round picks. Where are they getting home? Are they putting enough pressure? Like yesterday with Jalen Hurts, he's gimpy, and they're not really making a move in the pocket enough, So I think it's a combination, but the coverage just hasn't been there. And they use that zone match coverage. They went to that last year in the second half of the year after they ditched William Jackson. It was really good. And the communication was good. And so I think that has not been as good. But I go back to that. I've been surprised by that because, you thought, the secondary finished strong last year, and then you add 2 guys to that in the draft who you thought would have helped, and that hasn't been the case. So, I go back to that.
Have we overrated the talent, John? Has the talent been overrated? I understand they did well last year, but the year before they sucked.
Yeah, but you can't they played well for whatever happened the year before. The whole defense was bad, but they did play well at the end of last year, and they seem to handle that coverage very well. So, is there an overrating of talent? I mean, I think a lot of times most fan bases do that to a degree, but I think that you look at have some of the young guys developed enough? I think they're putting some guys in positions where against, the A.J. Browns of the world that are really, really tough. And, you go back to a lot of that. So I don't know. I mean, I guess, there is an overrating of talent, but they did play it well last year. And the talent is different than it was 2 years ago. I mean, Benjamin St. Juste is a better player than, and Cam Curl is still a solid player. So, it's hard to, there are a lot of reasons why. You can get into that. I mean, has Percy Butler developed enough at this point for them to be effective there? And, he had to take on a bigger role because Derek Forrest went out. So, it's a little, and I'm not putting on him by any means, but I just think there have been some times where there's been some growing pains with him, with Emmanuel Forbes, obviously. And then you're pressing, guys who have been backups into more prominent roles. And so, it all adds up. But it just feels like this defense is always disconnected. It's just always disconnected. And if the rush is getting there, where is the coverage not, right? And if the coverage has been good, is the rush getting there? And sometimes they're holding the ball for a few seconds, and somebody's got to get in there, right? Or are the pressure packages good enough? Are you relying too much on the 4-man rush? I think when you're struggling, everything is up for question. Everything.
So, John, the trade deadline is 4 p.m. Tuesday. Chase and Sweat, those are the names we hear thrown around the most. But will the team be aggressive? Would they be willing to listen to offers on Jonathan Allen, Daron Payne? Is anybody?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so, because they've gotten calls. Listen, they've gotten calls on, you name a guy, they've gotten a call on them because everybody thinks, they're not in a fire sale. This is not that situation, and I don't think. Yes, there'd be attraction for teams to want those guys because they're signed, but I think sometimes with those guys, it's a lot easier to trade them in the off season when teams know more of what they have as far as picks go, right? And might be willing to be more generous with some of those packages, right? But I don't see them making moves like that. That wouldn't make. It's not what I've heard from anybody around there about any potential moves. It's always been about the guys whose contracts are up and can you keep. That's why it's Montez Sweat and Chase Young. Can you keep them both? And they're at one point in the off season, it was, hey, they wanted to extend Montez Sweat. Now, this is before ownership took over. You want to extend Montez Sweat, and if Chase Young plays well, you can always tag him. You can figure out a way because they paid the other guys. But I do wonder, this is a big analytics group, and what the analytics would say about paying 4 guys at one spot, right? And so if you come to the conclusion that you can't, it's like that's just too much at one position, you got to spread it out, then you look to move one of them if possible, and if you get the right offer.
I mean, I don't think any team pays big money for 4 guys at the same position, right?
No, they don't. That's what I mean.
They can't do that.
It's right. It's right, and that's you're going to have to invest elsewhere too, even though they have the room. And I think the big key in all this is Sam Howell's progression, and if you don't have to pay the quarterback the next few years. I mean, there's a way you could make it work, but you look at this roster, and here's the other thing: if the line were producing the way everybody wanted them to, and they're wreaking havoc, well, then I think then you look at it differently. But that's not the case. That hasn't been the case.
I mean, if they beat the Patriots, JK, they're 4-5. I mean,
yeah, no, I know.
The Vikings look like they're done. I mean, I can't imagine the Vikings make the playoffs with a backup quarterback.
That's right. And that's why there wouldn't be a fire sale.
Right.
So
I've been saying that for a couple of weeks.
Yes. Yeah. No, it doesn't. That's why, like, when people talk about, they could, the Browns could go get Jacoby Brissett. Why? Like, this team, first of all, this team wants to keep him because they like him for Sam Howell. And then it goes to speak to your point. You're not done. Mm-hmm. Despite what anybody thinks, they don't think that. Now it may not play out that way, but this team, each of the last few years, has recovered. I just think this year's harder because there's so much swirling around them that they're in a different mental state, I would say. But you're right. You go up to New England, you win, you're 4-5. So you don't know, and so that's why you're not going to have a fire sale. But the other, with Sweat and Young, it really kind of comes down to, do you get the good offer you want because one of them is probably gone, and then you get that guaranteed pick in 2023 versus a potential compensatory pick in 2024 versus a potential one in 2025. So that's part of the decision, but it's exactly why you would not have a fire sale. That is not going to happen.
All right, John, I got a lot of questions. I don't want to get too big picture, but since we're talking about it, has anyone asked, and I know it's difficult because in your job, you got to balance tough questions with, I got to work with these guys every day, get information from them, right? So, I mean, there's a balancing act, no question. Has anyone asked Ron if he still has final say on personnel? You know what I mean? Or because it's an awkward year, right? Everyone understands how awkward it is. I would be curious to know because, Ron's got to win. So if I was Ron, it's obvious, right? You keep all the players you can. Who cares about next year? And my other comment to that, John, is we're always in this spot every 3-4 years, right? It's such familiar territory. Like, I know it when we all know it when we see it. Yeah. And even though sort of on paper we knew this regime probably wouldn't last, it's kind of amazing after a 2-0 start that we get here inevitably this quickly anyway.
Right.
On some level, we're lucky we didn't lose by 50 yesterday. The way the rumors were swirling, everything going into that. Guys want out. Guys want to, our guys going to get. It's just it's a debacle.
That's what I'm saying. The mental state is different this year.
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse, in my opinion. Did Hal do enough? Everybody, if you have 2 eyeballs, you saw the kid played very, very well yesterday. But they helped him. They schemed and all that stuff, and that's why. But he's also talented. Did he do enough, though? Because Jason's point all season has been, it doesn't matter what he does. A new regime always wants their own guys. And there's a lot of truth to that. Don't argue it. But if he keeps stacking good games, a new regime is going to come in. They're going to put on the film, and they're going to say, I want my own guy, but this guy's pretty good. Like, when are we at that point? I think he's got a few games he's stacked up. If he could have a few more like this, even a new regime might not move on.
Right. No, and that's the thing you don't know. And if you're the owner, you're going to want to see that too, because everybody has questions. Can he do it? Can he be a long-term solution? So the hard part to know is, if going down that path if there is a regime change, and what is the style of the new offense? Does it fit with what he does? I think there's a lot to build on with Howell if you want to, and that's always been. It's funny because I was talking to people close to him in the summertime, and like my thing with them is you wonder, will he get enough time, not just during this season, but as a quarterback in the NFL to develop in this offense, right? And it goes back to because everybody knew like this is a key year for this regime. So if you don't get it done, then they won't be here. And so, I think the hard part to know is, first of all, what draft pick would they have? Do you have a shot at a quarterback that you really like in the draft? If that's the case, then it would make sense that you would go that route. And here's the difference too between when Rivera took over and when if there is a change, any new coach taking over, is you're not going to have an owner's pet at quarterback. And so, you know what I mean? Like, so like when they took over, it was Dwayne Haskins. They knew the owner wanted him. And he was a first round pick. I get it. But they short of Joe Burrow being there at number 2, they were not going to take a quarterback. And I don't think you're going to have that problem this time. I think they would say, you do what you need to do. And that's kind of Harris's MO is give me information, give me the scenarios, give me, the whys and the possible what ifs, whatever, and then make a decision. And so I think it'll depend on all of that. If you have the number 7 pick and let's say, there's a quarterback.
Yeah, but what about
there
at the deadline? What about the deadline? So
you want to go back to that? Yeah. I think, again, what it would be is the owner will be involved with the decision, not saying you got to do this, but saying collect as much information. This is how, like, anybody the people who have worked for him in decision-making jobs will say the same thing. It's like you bring him information. And so their job is to collect the information and go to him and say, well, this is what it is. And he'll ask, well, what makes sense here? What about this? What about this? So so then it will be the decision from there. So I don't think that it's going to be, I don't think Rivera would, if Josh Harris says, well, then maybe we should trade him. I don't think Rivera's going to say, no, we can't. Unless you give them the reason, like, well, we can't because while this pick might be this, it's going to be at the, it'll be here and, it's close to a comp pick and down the road and we have a chance to do this. So, I don't think it's going to be as simple as Rivera will just summarily dismiss it. That's not what will happen. They'll have to collect the information. So while he is still the football guy, you're still tasked with getting the information, and Harris he would be involved in helping formulate the final decision.
Talking to John Keim, covers the Commanders for ESPN.com. You were there in the post-game presser. You may have asked the question. I just kind of wanted your reaction to what Coach Rivera said about not throwing the challenge flag.
Yeah,
he even kind of asked a question like, was it caught?
Yeah,
and I thought that was a sign of weakness. Kind of felt like we were eliminated from the playoffs. It just felt like that.
Yeah, I didn't take, because you're in the game. You're not, you're on to the next play. So I don't know that he would have had a chance to see or even know what happened, what was, on that play, because you guys are watching at home, you see the replays, and like, well, then it becomes obvious. But I think if you're standing on the sideline, you're not sitting there wondering. You're going on to the next play because you have to, and it was late in the game. The question I have, that one was the hard one. He said he didn't see on the big board, and there is somebody on the headset whose job is to, see it, right, or to see a replay of it. And then called buzz down and, you got to challenge it. No replay came up. The Eagles hustled to the line, and that was it. I just wonder, I'm sure he has to have a big level of regret, not just because, well, ultimately it wasn't a catch, but the way the sideline reacted was just automatic. Because I couldn't see a lot, but like, you could see on the replay of it, the sideline was right away, like that's not a catch.
Right.
And the way the Eagles got to the line, and it was a 4th down play, and it's late in the game, and it's a crucial drive, I just think it all adds up to, I think if he had to do it again, you would think that he would have just thrown the flag, despite whatever information you didn't get from there, because all those factors added up to like this is too big a point in the game
Right.
to not throw it.
Well, I think it's the combination of them because anytime there's a sideline play, the sideline's going to give a perspective. Oh, he didn't catch it. Oh, his feet were out. Like
Right.
Even if he did catch it.
Right.
Yeah.
They always react that way.
But it was so not like this. Not like this was so demonstrative. But
But
you're
then
right.
combine
That
it
would
with
be
the Eagles racing
Correct.
to the line.
Correct.
That's
Right.
where it tips me.
and where it was at in the game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was if that had been a 1st and 10 early in the game, you may just say, okay, you're right. Because we've all seen, in baseball, for example, guys like, oh, you got to challenge that. And then you find out, no, you're out. It's just because it was you thought you were safe. But, so yes, you could be fooled by that. But it was a combination. And then it was the point in the game that was such a crucial time that it's, that's when it was like, you know what, you got to take a shot because what if? Because if it's overturned, it's your ball, So that was that. That's what I say. And I haven't talked to him about this, but I'm sure he would say like in the next time, yes, I would throw it because it was, but yeah, when you're hustling the line and doing all that, like, take a shot.
John, we got to run. Good stuff. We'll talk to you
All right,
soon.
guys.
That's
Thank you, John. I
Keim.
appreciate it.
Thanks.